What is up, Fence fam? Joe Everest, the Fence expert, with about half a voice, coming to you live from FenceTech 2024 for the final live interview, coming to you from Nashville Music City Center, I believe, at wrapping up FenceTech 2024 with the one, the only, Michael Reed. If you guys are in the fence industry at all, you know exactly who this guy is. Michael, for the one or two people out there that may not have met you, brief introduction.
So I am the executive director of AFA. And I would love to take responsibility for this, but I have a fantastic team that executes FenceTech, and boy, did they ever.
You are not kidding.
So just to clarify, we have a group of volunteers that runs, plans FenceTech, runs FenceTech, and then it's my staff that ends up in executing that, and they just crushed it.
I'm telling you what, crush it. I don't know of a bigger word, but crush it almost seems like an understatement.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter the metric that you measure this by, whether it is by general attendance, whether it's by vendors, whether it's
show floor size, number of exhibitors. It just
crushed it.
Crushed it.
That's right. So, and I know it's going to take a little bit for the dust to settle.
Yep.
But just some general numbers that I'd heard thrown around. Last year was plus or minus 4,500 attendance.
Just over that.
Just over. Okay. This year, day one was roughly that same number.
Yeah, that's clicks through the show floor. So we ended up showing up with about 5,000 folks pre-registered.
Okay.
And we ended registration we ended registration around 7,500. 7,500. Yeah.
What a deal. And I tell you what, walking these, as big as this show is, is there a number on general square footage of booths here?
Yeah, so this year we were over 80,000 square feet. So in comparison, if you attended Oklahoma City, that was 70,000 square feet. So we're 10,000 square feet larger.
This feels bigger.
It is.
So I'm glad to hear that I'm glad to hear it's not just me.
So somebody was asking about that, and in Oklahoma City, we took up the entire convention center. And here, because it's Nashville, there's a little bit more on either side. But this hall is bigger. So it's not, your feet are not lying to you when they say we're a little hurting for walking from end to end.
I was talking about that with one of the vendors, is that when we got back each day, our feet felt like hamburger at the end of the day.
That's not a joke.
And it, like I said, it feels bigger, and just in terms of booths, in terms of obviously square footage. But as big as this show is, as big as the show floor is, it still felt busy.
Yeah. And
you get a big room, sometimes the big rooms can feel more empty just because you're spreading people out.
Well, I will say, that all comes out to show design and kind of professional show design, and the folks on our team that handle that part of the execution, they again did a great job keeping everything centrally focused. The reason why it feels the way that it does is because we did this large area right in the middle.
Yep.
And everybody kind of congregated around this central area and then branched off to go in either direction to see what they needed to see. So it was just great design, great execution. And the other thing that I think is really cool is that we stretched out this week so that people came for education early on. We had over 50 education sessions, and that was even before the floors opened. And so and if you looked at, talking about being packed is where I went with this.
Yeah.
The show floor was packed, but so were the classrooms.
Almost every one of them I went into.
Almost every classroom was standing room only, folks lined on the side. It was, crushed it.
I tell you, it absolutely, like I said, regardless of the metric you choose to measure this show by, I would think it exceeds expectations just across the board, no matter which metric.
So in a small way of exceeding expectations, you know how we do pins for every single one of these shows. So Oklahoma had a pin and Nashville has a pin.
Yeah.
So near the end of the day on the first day, we exhausted pins because we just didn't order enough.
Well, and that's the thing, right? So last year, a little over 4,500. The first day was about that through the door.
Right.
And then that was Wednesday.
Yeah, we took bags and bags of those pins home, and there was not a pin to be found in the whole place. And again, jokingly,
sure,
people are angry about it. we got to get some pins.
Need more pins.
We need more pins.
Well, and then we had Thursday, the full day. So Wednesday was a half day on the show floor.
Yep.
We had education in the morning. Then show floor open 12:30, I think, or 12:40. So it was even a short day, still packed. Thursday, full day, just as packed.
Wall to wall. I talked to one vendor and then told the story and said, yep, that's exactly how it was at my booth. So I talked to two folks that said that 1 minute after the show floor opened, they had a customer in front of them and they didn't stop talking to customers or prospects until the show floor closed.
Absolutely.
And then when I jokingly said that to somebody else, they said, yeah, that was exactly how it was at our booth too. So I'm glad that people have had that experience. I mean, that's the best way for attendees to feel like they had a good experience is that they learned a lot.
Yep.
The best way for exhibitors to feel like they got value out of their investment is that they saw a lot of people, and that's exactly what happened.
Absolutely. It's a win-win on both sides. I was talking with one of the vendors yesterday, and they made a point that it was a really nice mixture of attendees as well.
Yep. Meaning
that you had folks that were all the way from thinking about starting a fence company, maybe just starting, all the way to multi-generational, multi-decade fence companies and everybody in between.
So if you take FenceTech as a metaphor for the industry, that's why AFA is so incredible, is that that's exactly what you get in AFA. You get that brand new person who says, hey, you know what, I'm pretty good with my hands. I'm pretty good at building things, and they want to start a fence company. They're welcome here, as well as some of these exhibitors that are, hundreds of $1 million worth company. It's just, that's the beauty of AFA.
Yeah, it's well-rounded. Yeah. Also, not only in the attendees, but when you look at the vendors that are here, it's also a nice, well-rounded showing of vendors.
It's incredible.
I mean, obviously the material suppliers that you expect to see. Software, as ever, is always a big pull. So there's lots of good software here. You've got hardware. You've got, like I said, a really nice rounding of showings. As an exhibitor, your nice showing of vendors as well.
Yeah. And the nice way our team structured the event, if you came to that opening party on Tuesday night.
What a party.
It was a great party. And it allowed people to connect ahead of time.
Yes.
And then that feeling carried over onto the show floor. And so you may have played cornhole with somebody last night, and all of a sudden you're like, hey, let's talk about why your particular product is different than your competitors.
Well, walking by a vendor's booth and you see them there and you decide to stop in and say, hey, do you know these guys? I've been thinking about it. And then it starts that conversation. Yeah. I bet I had a dozen conversations with people I'd never met before at the opening party that then carried through the next several days.
Absolutely.
We'd see each other walking or wandering or in the park next door. Talk about a great innovation or a great change is the park that's right behind this booth.
Yep.
You've got games, family style yard games. You also have a ton of food vendors. You've got everything everyone needs all in one spot. That was really well done.
So it is an articulation of exactly what you say at the top of your show every single time. Welcome to Fence Fam. This is what this was supposed to reflect, that fence family feeling.
Yep.
So the park, having the food right here, being able to move seamlessly between business, that's how the fence industry works.
Absolutely.
And that's how AFA works, and that's how we wanted this event to come off.
Well, and you're still seeing it, right? This is the last hours of the show.
Look at it.
And you can still see pockets of attendees either having conversations with each other or still having conversation in vendors' booths.
Yep.
Bravo on having Friday be a busy day.
And I mean, people won't pick it up because of the mics, but I can still hear cornhole going on behind us.
Still something there behind us.
That's right.
Yep. I heard a few air horns, which means there's still some giveaways going on back there. I mean, it is to the last minute here. When historically, and not just this show, just trade shows in general, at home when we're doing lawn and garden shows, the last day is really feels like a vendor show. Right, whereas vendors meeting with vendors, not the case today.
No, and I think what ends up happening here, because of the size of the show and because you get into longer conversations with people, I think what ends up happening, you come with a list of folks that you were going to talk to.
Yeah.
and you're like, man, I only made it 3/4 of my way. Now I got to come back on that last morning and make sure that I talk to folks
and kind of finish up my list. It also doesn't hurt that as a city, Nashville is a great place to visit. You talk to a lot of people that, I mean, I'm
People
looking at a family here and there's 3 generations all here mingling, and they've got plans that, you know, this weekend they're sticking around to have more family fun here. It really helps that, you know, obviously this is a great show, but also it's in a great city that hosts family-friendly events.
Yeah. And I think this is just, you're leading me right through this interview. It's perfect. But I think what ends up happening is we start to turn our sights forward and we start to think about Salt Lake.
Yeah.
Again, that people will say, oh, well, Salt Lake is not Nashville. Of course it's not. But in terms of what it will do for families and to bring those families back, people will bring their families and enjoy their fence family and their regular family because Salt Lake is such a good draw for winter activities.
I think that is a nice segue to talk about FenceTech 2025.
Yep.
Salt Lake City, last week in February, is that right? Late February?
Yep.
So what can folks expect to see? Maybe the folks at home that weren't able to make FenceTech 2023, what can they expect in 2024?
Yeah, well, don't miss 25. If
25,
you miss,
24,
if
25.
you miss this, don't miss 25.
That's right.
So, I mean, where do you go from here, right? You took a big step up, and I think 2025 will have that same atmosphere. So I don't think that the culture of the show is going to change.
No.
The venue will change. It'll be a very different venue. Salt Lake City is a beautiful city.
Yeah.
It is immaculate, and they have a great music scene. They have there's lots of things to do there from a family entertainment perspective.
Sure.
And so I think that people that come to the show to grow their business, that's going to be what the show gets built around. This whole idea of, what are you going to do to be more profitable? What are you going to do to expand your business? What are you going to do to grow? And I think that message, that idea of how will you grow your business, will be what is important at that 25 show.
I agree. I talked to folks, so I wasn't able to attend last time I was in Salt Lake City, but talking with it's a subject of conversation here, talking about next year.
Yeah.
Almost
people love that Salt Lake City.
I was going to say, almost to a person, everyone I spoke to that had gone loved it.
They did.
Family friendly.
Yeah. That's why we're going back.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not a decision that I make or that the team makes. So what happens is in these particular cities, people had a great experience in Salt Lake City before, and they were like, put this back on the rotation. So we did. But it will be, I want to keep the culture of this show and keep how intimate it feels, that being able to flow from, an opening party onto the show floor, back to maybe a vendor event or a series of vendor events in the afternoon or in the next days. I want to keep that sense of community that we've built at this show to carry it forward.
That's one of the things, speaking of the community and how maybe tight-knit this community is, I can't tell you how fun it is to obviously see everyone in the education down below, see them on the show floor. Then that evening when we're all out as a team having dinner and maybe wandering around town after dinner, to continue to see our fence fam out in the wild and just continue conversations that started here outside of this. We talk about it a lot, but I think one of the main benefits of coming to this show isn't actually at the show. It's these side conversations or these after hours conversations that happen organically at these restaurants or after hours spots.
I love that. I love that kind of that sense that you just portrayed, because it's amazing how 7,000 people is actually a pretty small community.
Right.
So if we had 7,500 folks come through the door, you are still nodding at people when they're riding down the escalator because you're recognizing them. You are still seeing people out in the parties and the bars afterwards. You are still seeing them at the table next to you at the dinner, and it does make it feel like the fence fam.
Absolutely. Well, and we were meeting all new people at these after hours. We still had our lanyards on, right? So we'd have people come up and be like, hey, we're at FenceTech. I said, yeah, we are. Like, yeah, so am I. And so we also met entirely new members of the fence fam out and about.
And then when you see them in escalators or sit next to them in class or see them on the show floor, you're nodding and waving and shaking hands and then going to play cornhole.
That's right. And then you see them next year. So I can't tell you how many friendships of mine in this industry started at a FenceTech.
Yep.
You know, one of the other podcasters, Nathan Downs, he and I met at FenceTech Phoenix.
Yep.
And then that started an incredible relationship where we said, well, wait a minute, I'm from Missouri, you're from Oklahoma, we're about 3 hours apart, we should know each other. And we also happen to be in the same regional chapter
Yep.
of the American Fence Association. So we're seeing each other at meetings and all that. But as close as we are, it took us both getting to Phoenix before we met each other. And then, like I said, the friendship flourished from there.
Well, I think this is a great segue because the work that the four of you did, the four podcasters that we engaged, so you and Nathan and then Dan Blanc and Dan Wheeler, the four of you guys did a great job of kind of promoting the value of attending FenceTech. And I just can't say thank you enough to you and the others.
Well, you beat me to the punch because I was going to thank you for allowing us to have such a great platform here at FenceTech to, broadcast live, but also
it's beautiful.
I can't tell you how many conversations we had just standing around here. People walk by and come up. So I thank Michael, you, and I thank the AFA through you for allowing us to have, this platform, this area to produce this show from.
Well, again, you're welcome and thank you.
It's a win-win.
It is.
With all great relationships, I think the story of this whole FenceTech 2024 is win-win.
Yeah.
I think everyone I've talked to that was an attendee has had an incredible experience. All the vendors we've stopped and done videos with and talked to afterwards have had a great experience. Again, it's a win-win. You've connected the right dots at the right time to make sure everyone had a great time.
So one of the stories I love to tell, I'm now been here long enough where I can start to tell fence stories. And one of the stories I love to tell is kind of the purpose of AFA and this idea that the AFA logo, if you think about that three-sided fence with a giant AFA gate, that is the fence family. That logo articulates what AFA is, and there's room in the tent for everybody.
Absolutely.
And families don't always get along. There's differences of opinions, and that's certainly true in AFA. But still, you have us coming together within that fence with that giant open gate, so that people feel like they belong. And I like what you mentioning your conversations with Nathan at your chapters, because that's how we engage people through our chapters, through our special interest groups, the Women in Fence, the Hispanic Fence Professionals, the Young Fence Professionals, and the Veterans in Fence group. So that's how we connect with each other.
Absolutely.
And make that giant gate and that three-sided fence, make that a community of fence folks.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the special interest groups, because that was something I hadn't even gotten a chance to talk about yet. Had a great mixer downstairs last night for all of the different special interest groups, and talk about another well-done event. You had an entire room full of people that they ended up shutting it down, like just making people leave, because I think everyone was having such a great time having conversations. Yeah. So
I'd encourage you as you start to think about what you want to do, and in terms of that Veterans and Fence group, that Women in Fence group, they're all working on really, really cool projects. Yeah. And so I'd encourage you to kind of reach out to those folks and invite them on the show and get the message out, because
absolutely.
That's the impact of AFA, is when people get together and say, we're going to accomplish this. And then what the Women in Fence group is interlocked with the Veterans in Fence group and interlocked with the Hispanic Fence Professionals group. And everybody is all linked together. That's when we address really major issues in the industry. So if we're talking about workforce development, or the development of leaders, or we're talking about how to help companies grow, or how to help individuals be more professional. That's what AFA is. It's that community to help each of those things happen.
Couldn't agree more. And, so I'm a participant in the Young Fence Professionals. Now, I used to be on the young side of Young Fence Professionals, like an attendee. Now I've kind of morphed into more of like a mentor, I guess, of the group, but they still let me go. So
Yeah.
that's
well,
great.
I think the young fence professionals is great because they had a vision early on, and it wasn't just people who were young fence professionals. I think that's the target.
Yeah.
It's anybody who's new to the industry and wants to understand the industry a little bit better. And I was very visionary of those folks.
I agree, and especially involving those of us that are no longer young fence professionals, but also welcoming us in to say, hey, would you mind being a mentor? Can we connect you with one of the other members of the YFP and start a mentor-mentee relationship there? And I think that's an excellent point, that it's not necessarily age-related. It's also guys and gals that are just getting started. Or
Correct.
I'm telling you, I had 3, 4, 5, a handful of conversations with folks that were either just getting started or several of them were thinking about getting started. So props to you guys for making them feel included.
So this whole idea of mentorship is really neat, because if you think about one of the missions of the Veterans and Fence Special Interest Group, it's about connecting folks in a mentor-mentee relationship.
Yeah.
If you think about why and how that Women in Fence initiative will grow, it's through the ability of women to support other women.
Right.
If you think about how Hispanic fence professionals, their mission is very focused right now because they're working on education programs in Spanish and credentialing programs in Spanish. But they also have that connection, that mentoring aspect. And, and that open gate, 3-sided fence, inside community. And once you're in the community, you just make it smaller and smaller and smaller so you get what you need out of it.
Yeah. So guys, if you're watching at home and you're not active in one of these groups, you absolutely should be. I mean, there is a place for everyone here, which I think is the key takeaway.
It's where you belong.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's also talking about people. So today is like the local industry day. You open up the doors for the local contractors to come in, which I think is one of the reasons this place is still full today.
It was a great idea.
But you also had people traveling from literally all over the world.
We did.
So I met some gentlemen yesterday. They dropped off a hat today. 2 gentlemen flew here from Australia. They're fencing contractors in Australia.
So I know China, Japan, Australia, several places in Europe, including Sweden and Germany. I mean, this is truly becoming a global industry.
Absolutely.
And this is where that's reflected.
Well, and this is the connecting spot.
It is.
Right. So there's one comment here, Mark, if you want to bring it up. Absolutely. So I'd asked, do you recommend us to attend this exhibition as a 2 producer from Turkey? It's funny you should mention Turkey because I want to say there's 2. I met at least one vendor. I think the second one is also from Turkey.
Yeah.
So absolutely, this would be a great place for you to visit and exhibit at. But to your point, all over the world. I was having a conversation actually with a vendor from Australia that had a great fencing system. China, India. We had talked to a few people from India here as well. Just really culturally diverse, but just a professionally diverse group all meeting here at the same time.
Yeah, I think there's no escaping it. We like to say that, our businesses are local, but the reality of our supply chains now is that they're all global.
Right.
Many of them are global.
Right.
And there's no escaping that. Even if you run a small fence contracting business in Austin, Texas, your materials are coming from one of the coasts.
Absolutely. Well, I run a small fence contracting business in Springfield, Missouri, and I was able to take a half a day or so and actually visit vendors for my business. I talked about this yesterday in one of the interviews about, in today's modern age, one of the questions that gets asked is, in today's modern age of the internet and access to information in general, not just in the fencing space, but in general, are trade shows as relevant today as they have been in the past?
Yeah, for that, and that's not just for us. That's across all associations.
Agreed.
That question gets asked all the time.
Agreed, and it's a relevant question.
It is.
My answer is, my answer to that is, we found at least 3 vendors here that I guess I could have found out on the internet.
Yeah.
Didn't know they existed until I'm walking the show floor, stopped, backed up, looked in the booth and said, hey, wait a minute, I need to take about 5 minutes and have a conversation because this looks incredibly interesting. One of them was a tool that I'm sure I've seen, but they were demoing the unit and then handing it out for other people to demo. Like, this is how this works. Get it in your hand, work it. Super simple. It feels good in the hand. I could have found that elsewhere. I could have found that out on the internet, I'm sure. But it took me being here and them being here to connect the dots and make. Now that's going to increase the efficiency of my business, which ultimately hits the bottom line. But that's a very long-winded answer to say these trade shows are absolutely relevant today because it brings all of the available options to one spot. We've dedicated time to be here, so it's not trying to take 15 minutes after a lunch break to try to research a new tool.
Right.
Dedicated time to have a conversation, to put something in your hand, to demo it. I would say these events are obviously still very relevant.
I think that the world has changed for trade shows and for associations, and my answer is they're more relevant now than they were before.
Yeah.
Because the internet can just deluge with you with information.
Yeah.
And you need to touch something.
Right.
You need to feel something.
Right.
But it's more than that. It's also taking that time off, and it's the inspiration, because a lot of times the way our brains work, a lot of times one idea sparks another idea,
Sure.
and there's no other place for you to do that other than when you're walking up and down the hall. And I've talked to folks who are very inspired about being here. The term they use is, I didn't know this was going to happen this way, but I thought about this. I thought I was trying to solve this problem.
Right.
But I walked the hall, and not only did I solve that problem, I solved that problem, that problem, that problem.
Yes.
So trade shows in the past, people came and did deals, and that was what that was why they were called trade shows.
Sure.
Now I think people come to be part of the community,
Yeah.
and to learn, and to grow, and to be inspired.
Yeah. Well, and to learn is a big part of it, right? Yeah. So had over 50 educational classes, is that right? Like what you said earlier is everyone I popped my head in, it was standing room only, shoulder to shoulder. There's a ring of people around the outside of the room standing up. So not only is this the opportunity to meet vendors you may have never met, to put something in your hands that you may never have felt, but it's also the opportunity to sit and learn and hear stories and just learn things you may not have had the opportunity to learn otherwise either.
That's exactly right. And I think everybody, when you're looking at your company and you take a moment to say, okay, well, what's next for my business?
Yeah.
And sometimes that what's next is forced on you. You have a life change in your business, and now you have to change. Sometimes it's generational, like it was with your business.
Yep.
But at some point, you need to take just a moment and connect with other people who have had that same experience before. And that's the value of coming to this as an attendee, is that people, even though you feel like your business is unique and your business is, it's absolutely unique, and it absolutely is different than everybody else's business. But you have the same problems that other people have.
Right.
And this is where you solve them.
Agreed. That's very close to a conversation we've had before where we're talking about the fact that our industry as a whole now is becoming more inclusive, but also more open to sharing ideas, tips and tricks, because it used to be that this was my idea and this was my secret, and I don't want to share my secret with you.
Yeah, and the secret is
there is no secret. There is no, because as we compare notes, we realize, your secret's a different version of my secret.
That's right.
But maybe if we compare notes, we can optimize this again by working with each other, not against each other.
Yeah. So we started this whole thing by talking about are trade shows relevant?
Right.
And the answer is now more than ever.
Completely agree. Well, I don't know if you guys can hear it at home, but they are announcing that the show is over. Successful year. Michael, congratulations.
Well, thank you very much. And again, thank you and the others. But thank you very much for the support you've shown me as I've come into the industry, and the support for AFA. I really appreciate it, Joe.
Very welcome. Very welcome. Guys, if you weren't able to attend this year, make sure you put the FenceTech 2025 on your calendar. Last week in February, Salt Lake City. I'm going to be there, and I hope you will too.
Me too.
For now, Joe Everest, Michael Reed, reminding you that great fences make good neighbors, and I'll see you next time.